Welcome, Dive. Today, we're taking a really close look at the journey of a prominent bank CEO, but we're stepping away from, the usual focus on balance sheets.
Wow.
We're diving into the personal experiences, the background that really shaped his success.
Exactly. And our source material for this deep dive, it's actually just a single, pretty in-depth interview transcript, something that you, our listener, shared with us. And it gives, I think, a really open and insightful view on his life.
Yeah, it does. So our mission here isn't just to list facts. We really want to extract let's say, the core knowledge, maybe some surprising stories, and most importantly, those underlying insights, how his roots, his values, his learning, how it all connects to his professional life.
Kind of getting to the heart of what makes him tick, but, faster than reading the whole thing yourself.
Exactly.
We'll trace his family history, look at what he thinks success really means beyond just, say, school grades. We'll also delve into how important values and relationships are for him, like non-negotiables.
And his thoughts on the education system today. Quite candid, actually.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll try to sort of weave all these threads together, hopefully see the bigger picture.
Okay, sounds good. Let's unpack this journey then, starting right at the beginning with his roots. The interview kicks off talking about his family's migration history. This is before partition. Paternal side from Jalandhar, maternal from Amritsar, and both families eventually settling in Faisalabad.
And what immediately jumps out is the contrast, right, between the two sides of the family background. On his father's side, it was all business, like manufacturing, trading.
Right.
He specifically mentioned his dad setting up the Jalandhar ice factory in Faisalabad, apparently one of the first.
Ah, okay. Business focus.
But then his mother's side, completely different, all about education, professional jobs,
Yeah.
Doctors living abroad, that kind of thing.
So you've got this interesting mix, right? Entrepreneurial spirit meets professional focus in his heritage. But here's where it gets really interesting, the first sort of key insight. Despite that strong business background from his dad, his parents had a very clear, very specific wish for him and his three brothers.
They did. They explicitly told them not to go into business.
Really?
Yeah. And also, interestingly, not to pursue family marriages, the focus was just one thing: education.
Wow. So that parental decision basically set a completely different course for them. A deliberate break from the family's business past.
Absolutely. Shaped his early path, you could say.
It's fascinating, though, because despite that clear direction towards education, as a kid, he actually did want to go into business. Apparently, a professor even encouraged him.
Right. But life, as it does, took him down the banking path instead. And the interview suggests this wasn't, some grand lifelong plan from the start. But the interesting part is how he describes gradually developing a real passion for it, especially the human interaction part.
Ah, the people side.
Exactly, the customer interaction.
And he uses this specific word, shok, which, in Urdu, it's not just interest, it's deeper, like a real passion, a deep liking.
So the insight there, maybe, is that even if you don't land in your dream job initially, finding those aspects you genuinely connect with, like the people side, for him, can actually turn a job into something you're truly passionate about. A shok.
That makes sense. And that passion for human connection, it seems really fundamental to him because he talks a lot about building and maintaining sincere relationships.
He does. He described these relationships, both work and personal, as being, and this is his phrase, for the sake of Allah, which kind of suggests it's not just about, what you can get out of it, not just networking or personal gain. It's deeper.
And what really backs this up is just how long these relationships have lasted. He mentions colleagues from the very, very start of his banking career.
Like how long?
36, 37 years ago. And they're still close friends.
Wow.
And even friendships going back to his matriculation days, so the 1980s, still going strong.
Okay, just quickly, matriculation, for anyone unfamiliar, that's like the final year of secondary school, right? Kind of like getting your high school diploma.
Exactly. So the point is, this commitment to relationships, it's not just talk. It seems like a really core principle for him, proven by these decades-long connections.
Yeah, you can see the evidence.
And speaking of connections, there's this really powerful story he shared about a family helper, a man named Matu Chacha.
Oh, I remember this part. He was brought from a village when he was just a boy, right?
Yeah, and he ended up spending an incredible 65 years with the family.
65 years. That's That's just remarkable loyalty.
It really is. And the story gets even more poignant because even after the parents passed away,
He stayed.
he chose to stay. Specifically, he said, to look after the youngest brother who was then alone in the house. He felt this deep responsibility, this affection.
Wow. That says so much.
It really does. And it feels like a crucial insight into those values of loyalty, caring for staff, that seems so deeply ingrained in him personally. And he explicitly connects this personal value system to how he leads professionally.
How so?
Yeah.
Well, he says he basically never shows someone the door unless it's totally unavoidable.
Yeah.
He describes it almost like a required surgery for the organization, a last resort.
Okay.
His preference is always counseling first, trying to work things out.
So the takeaway there is how these personal values, loyalty, human dignity, they directly translate into a management style focused on support, on retention.
Yeah, the connection is clear.
And maybe the most striking thing he said on this, he claims he has never, in his entire professional life, actually told someone face-to-face that they were not required.
Never. That's quite something. Shows an extraordinary level of maybe empathy,
Yeah.
respect, even in really tough situations.
Definitely. Okay, so shifting gears a bit from values towards learning and academics, he paints a very honest picture of his school days.
Yeah, he wasn't exactly top of the class, was he?
No, not a topper, as he puts it. Usually ranked around, say, 5th to 7th. And he even admits to being a bit clindra.
Clindra, meaning kind of casual, mischievous.
Something like that, yeah. Definitely sounds relatable.
Huh. And he was into sports too, right?
Very much so. Cricket, football, squash. He even mentions playing cricket during his FSC exams.
FSC, that's the Faculty of Science, those intermediate exams after matriculation before university.
Right. So clearly, not someone solely buried in textbooks.
Which leads to a really important insight he shares in the interview. He stresses that what was actually far more important than just the grades was the habit of reading books outside the curriculum, something he started doing as a kid and kept up.
The wider reading. He specifically mentioned reading tons of Mustanzer Hussein Tarar's travel books, like almost all 60 plus of them.
Wow, that's dedication.
And also the works of Qudrat-ullah Shahab.
Right. And Shahab comes across as a really key figure for him, doesn't he? Almost an ideal personality.
Yeah. Why is that, do you think? What's the insight there?
Well, it seemed it's not just the writing itself. It's that Shahab reached the very highest levels of the bureaucracy,
Okay.
but managed to maintain this incredibly strong ethical approach throughout. That combination, high achievement plus unwavering ethics, seems to be something he deeply admires, maybe sees as essential for leadership.
That makes sense. And it connects back to his point about success, not just being about being bookish, right?
Exactly. He argues that practical life, real life, it demands being street smart, having commitment. It's not just about knowing how to pass exams.
He even relates this to interviewing job candidates. People might have fantastic grades, but they lack that ability to interact, to apply knowledge in a real-world way.
So the insight seems to be that his definition of capability, especially for leadership, it goes way beyond just the formal qualifications.
Right. It's more about a blend of practical intelligence, that commitment he mentioned, and the kind of character exemplified by people like Shahab.
Yeah, the kind of stuff you probably pick up from experiences and maybe from all that reading outside the academic box.
Okay, so carrying these ideas forward, values, learning beyond books,
Yeah.
he then talks about parenting, passing these principles on.
His philosophy seems to focus on things like physical fitness, making sure kids get outdoors,
Yeah.
and also, importantly, a conscious effort not to over-pamper them.
Right. And a really critical insight, I thought, from his parenting view is the role of parents in actually correcting their children.
You mean not automatically taking their side?
Exactly. Resisting that urge. He shared a very striking personal story about his own daughter.
Oh, yeah, the one with the driver.
That's the one. She was young, running late, and was quite rude to their driver.
Okay.
And he didn't just, tell her off. He sat her down and explained that the driver's role, her role, ultimately it's Allah's decision. And he asked her, how would you feel if things were reversed, if his daughter spoke to her that way?
Wow. That's a powerful way to teach humility, isn't it?
Yeah.
Respect for everyone, regardless of their job or status.
Absolutely. And he also remembered his own mother sharply correcting him once.
What for?
For not properly seeing off his tutor after his very first lesson, just walking away, again, drilling in that respect for helpers, for staff.
So these lessons were clearly deliberate in his own upbringing.
Seems so. And he contrasts this with something he's observed more recently, seeing a wealthy father just kind of passively watching his young daughter rudely ordering around their elderly driver.
Ooh, yeah.
And he feels that points to maybe a failure in some parts of society today to teach that fundamental respect.
And he links this back, doesn't he, to wider societal issues, like problems in marriages among the younger generation.
He does. He partly attributes those issues to a lack of tolerance, a lack of sincerity that he believes needs to be taught during upbringing.
Right. He has that strong line. What was it? Houses are built on manners?
Yeah, exactly. Houses are built on manners, using the word akhlaq, which is more than just manners. It's like good character, morals, etiquette.
Not just on money or possessions.
Right. Okay, let's shift focus again to his views on the education system itself. He has some pretty sharp criticisms.
Yeah, he feels like students today are treated too much like customers.
Customers, yeah. Which he sees as a stark contrast to the past, where he felt teachers were genuinely sincere.
He remembers teachers offering extra help for free, right? Like that 0 period.
Yeah, exactly. Those unofficial, often early morning sessions, teachers would just run voluntarily to help kids who were struggling or wanted to get ahead.
That kind of dedication, he feels, along with the respect for teachers, has declined. And he partly blames parental interference for that.
And there's a really significant insight here, I think, about a fundamental shift he sees in society.
What then?
He argues that modern society has basically replaced tarbiyat with talim.
Okay, break those down. Tarbiyat is...
Tarbiyat is like character building, moral training, the whole upbringing aspect, while talim is just education in the sense of acquiring knowledge, information transfer.
Got it. So character versus knowledge.
Right. And he feels society has mistakenly, wrongly outsourced the main job of character development, which he thinks belongs firmly with parents onto the schools.
And that, for him, is a major flaw in how things work now.
Seems to be. And just to bring his own school days back to life and maybe illustrate his point about not just being a bookworm, he shared a few funny Clinda stories.
Oh, yeah, the mischievous ones. Like a graffiti incident.
Yes. Where he wrote something about a teacher and then got his friend caught because the friend was trying to improve the handwriting on the graffiti to make it look better.
Classic. What else?
He also got caught himself once, eating a sandwich in class and simultaneously kicking the boy sitting in front of him.
Multitasking mischief.
Apparently so. And maybe the most brazen one, making a deal with his physics professor in college.
A deal.
Yeah, basically to skip class all the time but still get marked present. He just had to check in once a month to make sure the professor hadn't forgotten.
Wow. Okay. Those stories definitely underline his point about not always being the model student, but clearly learning other skills.
Maybe developing some of that street smarts he values later on.
Say it be, yeah.
Okay, so finally, the interview wraps up by touching briefly on his view of the banking profession itself. And he closes with a really quite striking comment about the customer relationship.
Right. He describes it as, what was the phrase? A pure commercial relationship.
Exactly. Pure commercial relationship. And when you put that statement right next to everything else we've just discussed.
Yeah, like his emphasis on sincere relationships for Allah's sake.
Yeah.
That incredible 65-year loyalty story with Maju Chacha.
His policy of never telling someone face-to-face they're not required. His belief that homes are built on akhlaq, not money.
It definitely raises a fascinating question, doesn't it? About how he navigates what seems like a potential tension. A tension between those deeply held personal values and the described nature of his professional world.
It really does. So let's try and summarize. What are the key takeaways from this deep dive into the CEO's interview?
Well, I think we've seen a picture emerge of a successful leader whose path wasn't just about climbing the ladder or getting top grades. It seems profoundly shaped by a deliberate focus on values instilled by his parents.
Yeah.
A real commitment to learning, but learning way beyond textbooks.
That's reading, yeah.
The cultivation of sincere, really lasting relationships, and what seems like a deep-seated respect for other people, regardless of their status or job.
Absolutely. The values he keeps coming back to, loyalty, humility, integrity, valuing that human connection, they feel like foundational elements.
Yeah, foundational to his character, and you'd assume, therefore, foundational to his leadership style as well.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with maybe a provocative thought to mull over as you reflect on this deep dive. In your own professional life, how do you navigate that potential balancing act? How do you balance deeply held personal values, like the ones we heard about today, with the reality that sometimes, often perhaps, professional relationships are transactional or purely commercial, as he put it.
Yeah, how do you integrate who you fundamentally are with what the job or the system seems to demand?
That's the question to think about.